Before the story starts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
The morning started like any other. Sunlight spilled over the quiet town, painting the streets in soft gold. Birds chirped lazily, and the smell of fresh bread drifted from nearby bakeries. But for him, the morning felt ordinary, predictable, safe, uneventful. He was a man who lived quietly, without fanfare, without drama, without fortune. A cup of black coffee in one hand, his phone in the other, he scrolled through notifications he barely cared about. Until the call came. An unknown number flashed on the screen. He almost ignored it. But something made him answer. "Hello," he said, casual, thinking it might be a wrong number. "Sir, I'm calling from the law office of Hargrove and Associates," the calm voice replied. A chill ran down his spine. Calls from lawyers were never good. "I'm calling about an inheritance," the man continued. He froze. Inheritance? The word felt alien. I think you have the wrong person," he stammered. "I don't have any relatives with land or property." "There is no mistake," the voice said. "You have inherited a property, 1,500 acres of land, from a distant relative. Everything is legally yours." For a moment, he laughed nervously. Surely this had to be a mistake. 1,500 acres? He asked, barely believing it. "Yes," the voice repeated, calm and unwavering. "All legal. All yours." He hung up, staring at the phone, trying to process the words. 1,500 acres. The number sounded unreal, almost mythical. How could one man, an ordinary man like him, suddenly own land larger than small towns? His mind raced with questions. Where was it? What kind of land? Why him? That night, sleep refused him. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining vast fields stretching endlessly, forests whispering with wind, and maybe even lakes reflecting the sunset. And yet, the question that haunted him the most was simple: who else is already using it? A week later, he found himself driving to see the property. The roads were long and quiet, flanked by trees that swayed lazily in the breeze. Every mile brought a mix of excitement and anxiety. He imagined rolling hills, dense forests, wild animals, maybe even a cabin he could call his own. But the moment he reached the property, the vision in his mind shattered. Clean, paved roads stretched ahead. Streetlights gleamed even in the midday sun. Perfect lawns lined each path. Cars, sleek and expensive, were parked neatly beside large, luxurious homes. Children laughed and ran freely. Gardens bloomed in perfect symmetry. It wasn't wildland. It wasn't untouched. It was a private community. He slowed the car and stepped out. The air felt different here, controlled, disciplined, almost artificial. He walked forward, heart pounding, only to be stopped cold by a large sign. Private property, HOA community. No trespassing. HOA. He read the letters again. Homeowners Association. A group controlling the land that was now supposedly his. A wave of disbelief and confusion hit him. How could this happen? He had inherited the land, and yet here it was: roads, parks, homes, security, all built without his permission. His stomach churned as the reality sank in. A security guard appeared, tall and serious. "Sir, this is private property," he said, blocking the path. I own this land," he said carefully, showing the papers he had carried in his folder. The guard looked at him skeptically. "Do you live here?" "No," he replied. "I just inherited it." "You need permission from the HOA," the guard said. Pointing toward a building at the end of the street, he added, "The HOA office is there. That's who you need to talk to." He nodded silently, taking a deep breath. Every step forward felt heavier. He felt like he had entered someone else's world, a world that had been built on his own property without his consent. He parked the car and walked slowly toward the HOA office. The building looked polished and intimidating. Large glass windows reflected the sun, perfectly trimmed hedges flanked the entrance, and a faint hum of air conditioning mixed with the distant laughter of children playing. This was not just a mistake. This was bold, deliberate, and illegal. Inside, the quiet hum of order was palpable. People typed on computers, answered phones, and moved in precise, practiced motions. The receptionist, a woman with sharp eyes and an unreadable expression, looked up. "Yes?" she asked, her voice calm but cold. "I'm here to speak with the HOA manager," he said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. Her gaze measured him like a predator sizing up prey. "Do you live here?" she asked. "No," he replied. "I just inherited the land. I have legal documents." Her lips curled into a faint, dismissive smile. "You must have mistaken. This land belongs to the HOA. We've been managing it for years." He handed her the papers. She took them, flipping through them quickly, then laughed a short, harsh, mocking laugh. "These papers mean nothing here," she said. "People like you don't fight HOAs." His pulse quickened, but he kept calm. There was no point in arguing now. The first step had been taken, he knew the truth. And truth always has a way of coming out. Leaving the building, he felt a strange mixture of anger and determination. His inheritance was not just a gift, it was a responsibility, a challenge, and now, a battleground. Sitting in his car, he looked back at the sprawling community that had stolen what was rightfully his. Every road, every home, every light fixture was evidence of a claim made without permission. But he was patient. Calm. Strategic. This was only the beginning. The first step of a long journey toward reclaiming his land had been made. And one thing was certain, whoever thought they could take what was his, had no idea what was coming. Because the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones armed with truth and the law, were the ones who always won in the end. And now, he was ready. The sun rose over the community again, but something had changed. For the first time, the streets felt tense. The perfect lawns, the sparkling homes, the quiet roads, they were no longer just pretty scenery. They were reminders. He parked his car a little farther from the HOA office this time. His hands were steady, his breath calm, but his mind raced. The first encounter had left him shaken not by fear, but by the audacity he had witnessed. A stranger had the nerve to laugh at him, at his legal papers, at the very fact that he now owned the land. He walked toward the building slowly. Every step was deliberate, measured. The building itself looked like a fortress. Glass doors reflected the sunlight, perfectly manicured hedges lined the walkways, and the faint hum of air conditioning created a low, almost eerie hum. This was not just an office, it was a machine of control. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and faint coffee. Phones rang constantly, computers clicked and typed, and the staff moved in synchronized motions, each step confident, precise. The receptionist looked up. Sharp eyes, neat hair, cold expression. She didn't smile, not even a little. "Yes?" she asked. "I'm here to speak with the HOA manager," he said calmly. Her gaze swept over him slowly, like a predator sizing up prey. "Do you live here?" "No," he said. "I just inherited this land. I have legal documents proving it." Her face twitched slightly, like a storm about to break. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and smiled a small, sharp, dangerous smile. "Documents mean nothing here. People like you don't fight HOAs." The words hit him, but he didn't flinch. He handed her the folder containing the legal papers. She took it without asking, flipping through the pages rapidly. Then, almost casually, she laughed. It was short. Harsh. Mocking. A sound that filled the room with confidence, the kind that comes from someone who has never been challenged. "This land belongs to the HOA," she said, her voice rising slightly. "We have managed it for years. We control it. You are mistaken if you think otherwise." He stayed quiet, letting her speak, letting her reveal her arrogance. He could see it in her eyes, the way her jaw tightened, the way her hands gripped the folder like it was a weapon. "I only want to talk," he said softly. "I want to understand this situation. Her eyes flashed with something dark, something dangerous. She leaned forward, her voice louder now, cutting through the low hum of the office. There is nothing to talk about. This is private property. You have no right here. Then she snapped her fingers. 2 security guards appeared from nowhere, moving with silent precision. They flanked him, tall, imposing, silent. You will leave, the manager said. Now. He looked at her calmly. Not a flicker of fear. Not a tremor of anger. Just calm, steady, unwavering calm. You are making a mistake, he said quietly. No, she replied, her voice like steel. You are. Outside, the sun felt hotter, brighter, almost blinding. He walked away from the building, every step measured. His heart wasn't racing, not from fear, but from focus. From the realization that this was only the beginning. The encounter left a mark. Not just on him, but on the truth itself. He had seen the arrogance of someone who thought rules and laws were beneath her. Someone who believed she could control what was not hers. Later that evening, he sat at a small table in a quiet cafe near his hotel. The legal papers were spread out in front of him, illuminated by the warm yellow light of a single lamp. He went through them slowly, carefully, mapping every boundary, every line, every note that confirmed the land was his. He realized something crucial: the HOA had not made a mistake. They knew exactly what they were doing. Every road, every fence, every sign had been placed deliberately, claiming what was never theirs. He thought about the woman he had just met. Her sharp eyes, her mocking laugh, the way she had summoned guards with a snap of her fingers. She thought she was untouchable. She thought the law could not reach her. And that was her mistake. The next morning, he went to the city land office. The building was old, quiet, and serious. The kind of place where the walls seemed to hold secrets, and the air smelled of paper and history. He requested the original land records for his inheritance. The clerk looked at him, then at the map, and raised an eyebrow. This is large land, the clerk said carefully. Quite unusual. Yes, he replied. It is mine. The clerk pulled old maps, scanned through records, and frowned. Minutes passed like hours. Then he turned to him, voice low. Strange. There's no record of this land being sold or leased to the HOA. He felt a cold, sharp edge cut through him. No mistake. No accident. No confusion. The HOA had taken this land illegally. Every inch of what he had inherited was being used by someone else, someone arrogant, someone bold. He left the office with copies of maps, legal records, and photographs. Every document, every line, every stamp confirmed it. The HOA had no claim. None. Back in his hotel, he spread everything across the table. He studied each paper carefully, memorizing boundaries, dates, and signatures. He didn't feel fear. He felt focus. Determination. A quiet, unstoppable fire growing inside. The HOA manager, he realized, would not give up power easily. She would fight. She would try to intimidate. She would use threats, lies, and manipulation. But she had underestimated one thing: patience. Knowledge. Truth. He leaned back in his chair and smiled quietly. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she could control everything. She had no idea what was coming. Night fell over the community. Lights flickered in windows. Cars glided silently along the paved roads. But the streets felt different now, charged with tension, heavy with inevitability. A quiet storm was brewing. The storm did not shout. It did not rage. It waited. And he was ready. This was no longer just a battle over land. It was a test of patience, of truth, of law. And he knew, deep down, that he had the upper hand. Because the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who wait for truth to be revealed, are the ones who win. Always. And he was about to win. The morning light fell softly on his apartment, but he didn't see it. He wasn't thinking about sunlight, coffee, or the quiet hum of the city. He was thinking about the land, 1,500 acres of inheritance that was not really his yet. Every road, every fence, every garden he had seen belonged to someone else. Someone bold. Someone illegal. After his first encounter with the HOA manager, the arrogance of her smile and the sharpness of her words haunted him. But it was not fear that drove him now. It was focus. He had documents. He had the law. And he was about to discover the truth. He arrived at the city land office, a building that had stood for decades. Its stone walls were cold, and the air smelled faintly of ink and paper. Inside, the soft shuffle of files, the quiet hum of typewriters, and the occasional cough created a rhythm that felt strangely serious. He approached the counter, laid out the inheritance papers, and spoke carefully. "I need the original records for this land. I inherited it recently, and I need to know the legal owner history." The clerk raised an eyebrow. "This is a large property," he said slowly, scanning the name and location. "Quite unusual." "Yes," he said quietly. "It is mine." The clerk turned to the filing cabinets and began the long process of searching. Minutes stretched into tens of minutes. He watched every movement, feeling the weight of anticipation in his chest. Finally, the clerk leaned closer, his voice low. "This is strange," he said. "According to these records, the HOA never bought this land. There's no lease, no sale, nothing. They shouldn't be here at all." His heart skipped a beat. No mistake. No confusion. The HOA was bold. They were deliberate. Every road, every park, every sign had been placed without permission, without law, without ownership. Every inch of his inherited land had been claimed illegally. He left the office with copies of every map, every record, every old document he could get his hands on. Each page confirmed the same truth: he was the legal owner, and the HOA had no right to use a single inch of it. Back in his apartment, he spread everything across the table. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated the papers in neat rows. Legal stamps, signatures, old survey maps, notes, proof beyond doubt. He traced the lines on the map with his finger. 400 acres of the land were already built on roads, parks, fences, houses. He could almost see the HOA manager smiling, thinking she was untouchable. Thinking she owned it all. But she didn't. Later that evening, he met a lawyer he had consulted before. A calm man, with sharp eyes and slow movements, as if every action was measured, every word deliberate. The lawyer studied the papers carefully, flipping through maps and legal notices with precise movements. Then he looked up. "This is a strong case," he said simply. He leaned in. "The HOA is using over 400 acres of your land without permission. No lease. No rent. No contracts. Nothing. They are acting illegally." He felt a mix of shock and quiet satisfaction. Shock because the magnitude of the illegal occupation was larger than he expected. Satisfaction because now, finally, he had the proof. The lawyer continued, voice calm but firm. "You have two options. First, you can file a lawsuit and take back full control. Or second, you can charge them rent. Back rent. 5 times what they would normally pay. And future rent as well." He blinked. "Is that legal?" "Completely," the lawyer replied. "And it will hurt them where it matters most: their money, their reputation, their control." He didn't rush to celebrate. He didn't shout. He didn't call the HOA manager or confront her immediately. He knew that patience was the weapon here. Aggression was not necessary. Law, facts, and timing were his allies. That night, he sat alone, papers spread across the table, going over every line, every survey, every legal stamp. The arrogance of the HOA manager came back to him, the snap of her fingers, the mocking laugh, the way she had ordered security to block him from his own land. She thought she had power. She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. The next morning, the lawyer drafted the official notice. It was precise, professional, undeniable. It stated the facts clearly. Illegal land use. No permission from the rightful owner. Back rent owed. Rent to be paid 5 times the normal amount going forward. It was a paper that would shake the community. A paper that would strip the arrogance from the HOA manager. A paper that would begin the long process of reclaiming what was rightfully his. When the notice was delivered to the HOA office, chaos erupted. Phones rang endlessly. Board members argued in hushed but urgent voices. The manager read the document over and over, each time her confident smile shrinking, her face paling. "This cannot be real," she shouted at the staff. "This is a mistake." But it wasn't. Every word, every line, every page was backed by law, by history, by undeniable proof. For the first time, fear crept into the office. Not fear of him. Not yet. Fear of the truth. Fear of the law. Fear of losing everything they had built on stolen ground. He didn't attend the meeting. He didn't appear in person. He remained quiet. Invisible. Patient. Watching from afar. Every call, every email, every frantic attempt by the HOA to cover up their mistakes was documented by his lawyer. Every error they made added strength to his case. The HOA tried intimidation. Threats. Fake fines. Rumors. Nothing worked. Each attempt only reinforced the truth. Each step backfired. And he waited. Because the truth doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It simply exists. And when the time is right, it wins. That evening, he walked through a quiet street near the land, looking at the signs, the houses, the roads. Everything had been placed illegally, arrogantly, as if no one would ever challenge it. But now the challenge had come. The battle had begun. He knew that patience, law, and truth were stronger than fear, arrogance, and stolen power. The HOA thought they were untouchable. They believed no one would check the records. But he had. And now, the next step was clear. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't anger. It was justice. Slow. Certain. Inevitable. The quiet man, the patient owner, was about to take back everything that was his. And the HOA, so confident, so arrogant, would soon learn that their empire was built on sand, and the tide of truth was coming. The morning air was crisp, but the quiet streets felt heavy, almost tense. Inside the HOA office, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Phones rang. People typed. Emails pinged. Papers shuffled. But it was about to change. A thick envelope slid across the manager's desk, startling no one but her. She picked it up, and for the first time in years, something felt wrong. The envelope was official. Heavy. Silent, as if carrying a secret too large for words. She hesitated before opening it. Then she unfolded it, her eyes scanning the text. Instantly, her confident expression faltered. Then blinked. Then froze. The words on the paper were simple, precise, undeniable. It explained the facts. The land belonged to the man who had inherited it. The HOA had no legal claim. The HOA had been using over 400 acres illegally. Back rent was owed retroactive. Future rent would be 5 times the normal amount. She read it again. And again. Her fingers trembled slightly, gripping the paper like it might bite her if she dropped it. 5 times, she whispered, almost to herself. Yes, the letter said. And there was nothing more to debate. Immediately, chaos began to stir. Phones started ringing. Board members gathered around her desk, their expressions a mix of shock and panic. This can't be real, one of them stammered. Check it again, another demanded. But every word on that page was verified, backed by law, supported by evidence. She slammed the letter down. Her nails dug into the polished wood. This man is bluffing, she shouted. He can't do this. We control this community. We've always controlled it. But the words had lost their power. The truth was stronger than arrogance. The evidence was stronger than bluster. In his apartment miles away, the man sat calmly. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't care. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He had been patient. Quiet. He had waited while the HOA flaunted power over land that wasn't theirs. And now, the first move had been made. Patience was his weapon. Law was his shield. The papers in his lawyer's hands were not threats, they were reality. Back at the HOA office, the panic escalated. Members argued, whispering in corners, checking records, trying to find loopholes, trying to find excuses. Phones rang non-stop. Emails flooded in. Meetings were called. The manager's sharp voice rose above it all. This is harassment. We demand an explanation. This is illegal. But no one could answer her. The city had the records. The maps were official. The evidence was overwhelming. She tried threats next. Block him from entering the property, she barked at the security guards. Find him again, she added, grabbing her phone. Send violation notices. Every move she made, every command, only reinforced the very argument she wanted to destroy. Every illegal act became evidence. Every threatened action, a trap. The board members, once obedient to her, now looked unsure. One of them dared to whisper, almost trembling. Did we ever legally own this land? The room went silent. Not a single word could answer that. Her eyes flared with panic, but deep down, she already knew. The first meeting had failed. The second, the third, nothing worked. Her confidence cracked under pressure she could not see. She had underestimated the quiet man with the papers. For the first time, fear crept into her mind. Fear, not for the HOA, but for herself. Her empire, built on arrogance, on stolen authority, was collapsing. Meanwhile, the man remained invisible. No confrontations. No shouting. No public declarations. He let the law move for him, let the evidence speak, let the truth settle like a slow, unstoppable tide. Each attempt by the HOA to intimidate him only added to the story that would soon reach the courts, the city, the public. Every illegal fine, every threat, every attempt to block his access was meticulously documented. Days turned into a week. The HOA's panic grew. Meetings became frantic. Board members whispered, argued, and pointed fingers. Residents began asking questions. Why are fees increasing? Why now? Who really owns this land? The manager tried to maintain control, but control had slipped through her fingers. Every move to regain it only exposed more weakness. One morning, an officer arrived at the HOA office. The manager had requested clarification about the back rent notice. He reviewed the documents, silently, professionally. Maps, legal deeds, survey papers, city records, everything matched. She tried to interrupt. She tried to shout, to argue, to twist facts. But for the first time, no one listened to her. The law was louder than her voice. By the end of the week, the HOA was in shambles. Accounts drained. Legal pressure mounting. Residents questioning authority. Threats from the manager ignored. The office that once radiated confidence now felt heavy, tense, fragile. Every step was weighed down by the inevitability of truth. And somewhere, far from the chaos, the man walked through his inheritance. The roads, the parks, the fences, the houses built illegally, arrogantly, were now under scrutiny. The quiet owner observed everything without a word. No celebration. No gloating. Only a calm certainty. Patience had won the first battle. Law and truth had delivered the first strike. And the HOA, which had once bullied and controlled, was now exposed, trembling under the weight of its own arrogance. As evening fell, the sun painted long shadows across the community streets. She sat alone in her office, staring at the rent notice. The same hands that once ruled with confidence now trembled. The letters 5x rent burned in her mind. She realized, finally, that power is fragile. And arrogance, unchecked, always falters. The man, miles away, looked at the sunset through his window. No triumph. No celebration. Only the quiet knowledge that the next move was coming. That the truth was patient. That law, patience, and careful planning were stronger than threats, fear, or intimidation. And the storm he had set in motion was just beginning. The HOA thought they could intimidate. They thought they could threaten. They thought they were untouchable. They were about to learn, the hard way, that the quiet ones with patience, truth, and the law on their side always win. The community woke to whispers. Not loud whispers, but quiet, urgent murmurs that carried down the perfectly paved streets. Something had shifted. Something unseen had begun to crack the foundation of power that the HOA manager, Karen, had built. Inside the office, she paced like a predator trapped in a cage. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished floor, echoing off the walls, but the sound felt hollow now. Once, those clicks had been the heartbeat of authority. Once, every staff member had frozen at the sound of her voice. Now, nothing. She picked up the phone, dialing furiously. Every number was a potential lifeline, every call a desperate attempt to reclaim control she no longer had. But the lines buzzed with resistance. Emails went unanswered. Board members whispered in corners, avoiding her gaze. Her confidence began to fracture. She slammed a fist on the desk, rattling pens and papers. "This is harassment," she shouted. "He cannot do this. We control this community. We are untouchable." Her voice, once sharp and commanding, now trembled at the edges. But it was useless. The truth had arrived, quietly and relentlessly. The legal papers, the city records, the maps, they didn't care about her shouting. They didn't bend to her anger. They simply existed, unshakable, undeniable. That morning, the first wave of panic came. Residents started asking questions, timidly at first, then louder as fear mixed with curiosity. Why are fees rising? Who owns this land? Is the HOA manager even telling the truth? The staff avoided answering, and Karen's face grew red with frustration. She snapped at them, her words sharp, her temper flaring. But every outburst only drew more attention to the cracks in her power. Karen's next move was instinctive. Control. Authority. Fear. She ordered security to block him from entering the property. Guards stationed themselves at the gates, arms folded, faces stern. No one could pass without her approval. She sent violation notices. Fake fines. Threatening letters. Every move was designed to intimidate, to scare, to show dominance. But the man did not react. Every threat, every attempt at fear, only strengthened his position. Everything he needed for his case, the arrogance, the lies, the illegal actions, was now documented. Every mistake Karen made was proof. Inside the office, she tried to rally the board members. "We cannot let him take this land," she shouted. "We've built a community here. We have control. We have power." But her words fell flat. Board members exchanged nervous glances. Some were angry at her rash commands. Others were scared of the legal consequences. A few had started asking the question she feared the most. Did we ever actually own this land? She didn't answer. Silence hung heavy, louder than any shout. Her empire was crumbling before her eyes. That afternoon, he appeared. Quiet, calm, deliberate. He walked toward the land with his lawyer at his side. Security tried to stop him, stepping forward with authoritative gestures, but he simply recorded everything on his phone, calm, measured, patient. Karen arrived moments later, storming down the path, her face flushed with anger. "You are not allowed here," she screamed. He didn't answer. He did not shout back. His lawyer stepped forward, voice steady, cutting through the chaos. "This man is the legal owner," he said. You are committing a crime by blocking him from his property. Karen laughed a wild, unhinged laugh. You can't touch me, she shouted. This is my community. I built it. But no one listened. The residents had gathered at a distance, watching, whispering. Phones were out, recording. Emails were being sent. Every move she made became evidence. Then, it happened. The police arrived. Calm. Professional. Ordered. They reviewed the documents, the legal deeds, the city records. Every map, every record, every signature verified what he already knew. Karen shouted, tried to argue, tried to manipulate. She waved her hands, stomped, and threatened. But for the first time, no one listened. The law was louder than her. Her fury turned into panic. Her arrogance into desperation. Every command that once caused fear now exposed her weakness. By evening, the HOA office was a shadow of its former self. Phones were quiet. Staff moved cautiously. Meetings were tense, anxious. Emails piled up, unanswered. The board members, once obedient, now moved like people unsure of their own existence. Karen's power had evaporated, leaving only fear and confusion in its place. The vote came at last. Emergency. Unanimous. Karen was removed from the office. Suspended. Stripped of authority. She walked out, carrying a box of personal items, the same office she had once ruled like a fortress, now a hollow shell behind her. The staff watched silently, a mix of relief and disbelief in their eyes. The man did not gloat. He didn't need to. He walked on the land he had inherited, the land once blocked, once controlled, now open. Roads, fences, and houses, all illegally placed, were now under scrutiny, under truth. Residents whispered among themselves, realizing for the first time how close they had been to following the wrong leader. And Karen? Alone, defeated, powerless, she realized that control built on arrogance and lies was fragile. Very fragile. He looked over the fields as the sun began to set. The quiet ones always win. The patient ones always find a way. And the truth, like water, always finds the path to its level. Karen had lost because she refused to face reality. She had lost because she had underestimated patience, law, and quiet determination. And the man? He had not even raised his voice. He had simply waited. And waited. Night fell over the community, painting long shadows across empty streets. The HOA office, once the symbol of fear and control, was silent. He stood alone on the edge of the property, the wind ruffling his hair. His inheritance stretched before him, quiet, calm, undeniable. No celebration. No triumph. Only the satisfaction of inevitability. Karma had started its work. And for the first time, the community and Karen felt the weight of truth. Because power built on lies is never stronger than the law. Because arrogance is fragile when patience strikes. And because the quiet ones, armed with truth, always take back what is theirs. The morning air was heavy with tension. For the first time, the streets of the community felt different. Perfect lawns, shining cars, and quiet roads, everything seemed smaller, fragile, vulnerable. A storm had passed, but the damage it left was visible in the silent looks of residents, the quiet shuffle of board members, and the hollow echo of an empty HOA office. The building itself felt weaker now. Glass windows reflected the sun, but the reflection was distorted, shaky, as if the walls themselves knew the empire within was crumbling. Inside, Karen was gone. Removed. Suspended. The office she had ruled with a sharp voice and a sharper temper was quiet, almost abandoned. Board members sat around the main conference table, staring at papers that told the story of their collapse. The numbers were horrifying. Back rent owed. Legal fees piling up. City fines stacking like invisible bricks pressing down on their shoulders. Every spreadsheet, every ledger, every account confirmed it. The HOA was bleeding, and there was no turning back. The residents began asking questions. Why did this happen? A woman asked, clutching her children's hands. Why are our fees rising? A man said, voice trembling. Who really owns this land? A teenager asked, curious, confused. No one had answers. No one could explain the sudden unraveling of an organization they had trusted for years. The board looked at each other nervously, the weight of truth pressing down. Their leader, Karen, had vanished, and the empire she had built on lies and arrogance had no foundation to hold it up. The city inspectors arrived quietly, without fanfare, carrying clipboards and cameras. They walked slowly through the community, noting every road, every park, every streetlight. They checked permits, maps, and records. What they found was not surprising to him, but it would be shocking to the residents. Buildings were constructed illegally. Roads were extended without permission. Parks were maintained on land that didn't belong to the HOA. Every corner of the community revealed mismanagement, abuse, and arrogance. Red tags were posted. Stop work orders were issued. Official notices were delivered. The HOA tried to respond, scrambling to fix the mess, selling assets, cutting services, raising fees. But every attempt felt desperate and small. The truth was already in motion. Meanwhile, he stayed away from the chaos. No interviews. No public appearances. No shouting or gloating. He let the law move, let the evidence speak, let the city and courts handle what arrogance had built. Every misstep by the HOA became another piece of proof. Every threat, every fine, every attempt to regain power was recorded and catalogued. Inside the boardroom, tension mounted. Emergency meetings were held, voices raised, accusations thrown. Some members blamed Karen. Others blamed each other. The once unified board had fractured. Panic replaced confidence. One member spoke quietly, almost trembling. We've lost control. How do we fix this? No one answered. The weight of inevitability hung over them. The empire they had believed was unshakable was gone. Collapsed under the simple, undeniable truth, they had no claim. Residents began to understand the reality. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some were just silent, watching history unfold before their eyes. They realized the HOA they had trusted for years had been built on lies. On arrogance. On stolen authority. The streets felt emptier. The once lively playgrounds were quiet. Cars drove more slowly. Neighbors spoke in whispers. Change was coming. And it was unstoppable. The court decision came like a thunderclap. Clear. Decisive. Legal. The HOA had lost. Every illegal use of land, every unauthorized building, every back rent owed was confirmed. They were ordered to pay, to compensate, and to cease all illegal activity immediately. Board members resigned one by one. Some fled quietly, afraid of the consequences. Others tried to negotiate, but there was nothing to negotiate. The law, patience, and undeniable evidence had won. The community's power structure, the same one Karen had ruled with arrogance, was gone. He walked through the streets of his inheritance, quiet and calm. The roads, parks, fences, and homes that had once been symbols of stolen control were now under scrutiny, under correction. Every illegal act, every misstep, every threat by the HOA had been exposed. Residents watched him from a distance, whispers traveling across the lawns. Some nodded in respect. Some shook their heads in disbelief. All realized the truth: the quiet man, patient and persistent, had won without shouting, without threats, without chaos. Karen's absence was felt everywhere. The office she had ruled like a fortress was quiet. Files were scattered. Phones were silent. Her influence, once feared, had evaporated. The community that once obeyed her every command now realized that authority built on lies and arrogance could not survive scrutiny. He stood at the edge of the land as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the community. Everything felt different now. Quiet. Calm. Balanced. The HOA had collapsed not because of anger. Not because of confrontation, but because truth and law cannot be ignored. Arrogance cannot withstand patience. Lies cannot survive scrutiny. The residents began returning to a new routine. Some stayed. Some moved away. But the lesson remained. Power without honesty is fragile. Authority without law is weak. Patience, evidence, and truth are stronger than fear, threats, and arrogance. He walked slowly along the paths, observing the changes, seeing the community learn the lessons it had long ignored. And he realized that this was bigger than land, bigger than money, bigger than a legal battle. This was about karma. As night fell, the quiet man stood on his balcony, looking out over the community. The lights glimmered softly. The streets, once dominated by fear, were calm. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply watched. The HOA had collapsed under the weight of its own lies, and karma had begun its work. The storm of arrogance had passed. And in its place was the calm of justice, undeniable and unstoppable. The morning sun rose slowly over the community, casting long, golden beams across the empty streets. For the first time in years, the HOA office was quiet. No shouting. No hurried footsteps. No furious emails. Karen, the woman who had once ruled with an iron fist, was gone. Suspended. Defeated. And the empire she had built on arrogance and lies lay in ruins. The residents moved cautiously through the streets. Some peeked from behind curtains, others whispered to neighbors. The roads, the houses, the parks, everything had been built illegally, yet now they were calm, exposed to truth, and open to correction. He walked onto the property for the first time without guards, without hesitation. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of grass and earth. The roads stretched endlessly before him. Parks, playgrounds, and lawns shimmered in the morning light. This was his inheritance, finally, undeniably his. But he did not smile. He did not celebrate. He paused, taking in the scale of the land, feeling the weight of patience, law, and justice that had brought him here. The residents watched from a distance. Some had fear in their eyes. Some had awe. Some had quiet relief. They had been part of the HOA system for years, unknowingly following a leader who had misused power, abused authority, and ignored the law. And now, they saw the truth laid bare. Karen's downfall was complete. She had called lawyers. She had tried to negotiate. She had tried to intimidate, to manipulate, to reclaim control. But every attempt failed. The evidence, the law, and patience had been stronger than her threats. Her name would be remembered in the community, not as a leader, but as a warning. A warning that arrogance has limits, and lies cannot withstand truth. The HOA board members had been forced to resign. Assets were sold. Accounts frozen. Official orders had been issued. The community, once under her control, had become a symbol of collapse caused by greed, lies, and illegal actions. The man observed all of it quietly. He had not gossiped, not shouted, not celebrated. He let the law move. He let the evidence work. And now, he stood victorious in silence. He called a small meeting with the honest residents who had stayed, the ones who had followed the rules and contributed to the community in good faith. "I'm giving you a choice," he said softly. "You can stay. You can live legally on the land. But everything must be fair. Transparent. Honest. Rules will apply equally to everyone." People were shocked. Some smiled with relief. Some nodded quietly, thankful. This was not revenge. This was fairness. This was restoration. He walked through the fields and roads he now owned. The playgrounds where children had once laughed under the rules of the HOA were quiet now. The houses stood empty or semi-occupied, awaiting the new, fair structure. Every building, every fence, every road that had once represented stolen authority now symbolized accountability. The wind carried a lesson for those who had watched and waited. Power built on fear is fragile. Authority built on lies is weak. Arrogance cannot survive patience. And the quiet, patient, law-abiding man? He had been unstoppable all along. Even Karen, isolated and defeated, could not escape karma. Legal penalties were issued. Investigations confirmed every wrongdoing. Every threat, every illegal fine, every act of intimidation she had tried was now documented. Her power had vanished. And she realized, finally, that the world does not bend to arrogance. It does not yield to threats. It responds to law, patience, and undeniable truth. He watched the sun begin to set over the vast property. The fields stretched endlessly. The houses, roads, and parks now stood on corrected foundations. And he realized something: the inheritance had never been just about land. It was about justice. It was about truth. It was about patience. And it was about karma. The community slowly began to recover. Some residents stayed. Some laughed. But all had learned a lesson: power is fragile when built on fear. Arrogance is exposed when challenged by law. Lies crumble when patience meets truth. And for the first time, there was peace. Real, calm, balanced peace. He stood on a hill, looking at the horizon. The sun painted the sky with deep oranges and golds. Trees swayed gently. The wind whispered through the fields. This was the inheritance he had always deserved. Not because of aggression. Not because of anger. Not because of shouting or threats. But because he had waited, watched, and acted with patience and knowledge. The HOA's empire had fallen. Karen had lost control. And the community had witnessed the truth. No celebrations. No gloating. Only calm. Only justice. Only karma. The quiet man turned, walking slowly back through the roads that were now under law and fairness. Residents nodded respectfully. Children played cautiously in the open parks. Life was beginning to return, but now with balance and honesty. He paused one last time, looking over the land he had inherited. This is what patience brings, he thought silently. This is what truth brings. This is what karma delivers. The wind carried his words across the land, a silent lesson to anyone who ever thought they could cheat, intimidate, or rule with arrogance. The sun disappeared behind the hills. Shadows stretched across the streets. The community had been corrected. The HOA had collapsed. The law had triumphed. Karma had arrived. And the quiet man? He had simply waited.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed it.